Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. And today's video, I'm going to bring you some more digital painting techniques that I've learned over the time here. So I'm using Adobe Photoshop CC, as you can tell. And what I want to go over with you today, I've been getting requests for like weaponry, so I'll do a shield I think will be fun to do. So I'll go ahead and get started with that. Now, one thing, depending on how you draw, you can always start off with a sketch first, or you can start painting in your shapes. One of the things I want to talk about is defining a solid shape and working off that solid shape. I think it's a fun way to paint, and there's a lot of applications for it. So let me come up with a cool kind of sketch here, or what I think is cool for a shield. Could be something like something like this. Maybe put another couple of spikes off the side. Okay, so there's our basic rough sketch. You see I put that on a separate layer. And just so you know, I'm using a Wacom Cintiq here. You can use whatever you got, but that's my current weapon of choice here. Alright, so I'll go ahead and put another layer over top. And what I wanted to show you in this video, primarily, is the way to define a solid shape first and work off that. So what I'm going to do is actually use the same brush at 100% opacity. And I could probably just paint half of this just to save some time. But what I'll do is define the overall shape first. Something like this. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but, you know, get it to whatever level of cleanliness you like. And I'll do half just because it's a symmetrical shape or whatever. So you fill this in. That's why I got the 100% opacity. You can pick a brush too that doesn't have transparency set in the pen pressure, and it won't do this lighter stroke like that, but I'm not worried about it. I'll just fill it in. I'll press a little harder. Get it done. Okay, almost there. And I use this copy and distort effect quite a bit that I'm about to show you, but I'm sure if you're not very new to Photoshop, you're aware of it, but I'll show you how I use it to help out with things like this. Because of course, time is of the essence. The one thing we don't get any more of. Almighty time. Okay, so I'm going to show you something else I do a lot with stuff like this, where you see I'm trying to get these cleaner points in there. If I wanted this to be really defined, like if I planned on this being some really high def gaming concept art or something like that, I'd get in here a bit more with my selection tools maybe and do some stuff like this, and you know, really clean up my points and get, you know, whatever level of finish that I'm looking for. But for the sake of this, I really don't need to do this a whole lot. I'll just touch up the spike here and probably call it good. Fill in these little blank spots. Those are probably more important, because actually the way I'm going to paint here in a second will matter that these are, you know, these see-through areas are filled in. Okay, so there's our basic overall shape, right? So now I grab the pointer tool, which I believe you can get to that by hitting V. Let me check. P, V. Yeah, V on the keyboard. Hold Alt, and it'll automatically copy that for you. Edit, transform, flip horizontal. Command T, rotate that into place. Kind of almost like in that separation there. I might, yeah, I'll go with that. I kind of like that actually. It gives me a little bit different shape. But the other thing I want to show you is now hitting Edit, Transform, Distort, And just to add to the perspective, I can distort that edge in a little bit more. What it does is it makes it, what I'm picturing is that this part of the shield is closer to the viewer, and so naturally in recessed space this would go down and back. So that's my thought process there. Hit B to move that around, kind of align the bottom points, something like that. I think that's about what I want to go with, so I'll hit Command E to merge that down. I'll get rid of my sketch layer now so I can see a bit more clearly. And I'll hit Alt, select this color, and I will now just paint straight across. I think something like this. Although it makes the tips up there look like they'd be a bit fragile, but it's okay. We're in science fiction land. Maybe this is made out of adamantium or whatever, however you say that. And it's indestructible, basically. Alrighty, so there's our basic shield shape. So now by hitting lock transparency like so, this is where the fun comes in. I can start painting freely now, not going outside of this. And I'll actually duplicate this by hitting Command J. Take that one layer off. Make sure that, and you see after I did that, it took the transparency off, so make sure to hit that back on. And so now I can freely paint on this thing, and, I've made a backup so I can really, do whatever I want. And it allows me to, have that defined shape with a nice crisp edge, which, sometimes with painting, you got to be careful to not, you have to work harder to get crisp edge work. So if you start in this direction with certain things like mechanical shapes, weaponry, you're going to find it a little bit easier. I even use this effect for like mountains in the background, and then if I need a more blurred edge because it's out of focus, then I use like a Gaussian blur. I can't say anything today, but hopefully you know what I'm talking about. And so I just blur it at the very end if I need to. So, all right, let's get painting here. I like to turn the opacity pretty low. I'm using the chalk brush. And there's my brushes there. If you watch some of my other videos, I try to use a very meager set of brushes. And those are also available on my DeviantArt for download at ramstudios1.deviantart. So, and if for whatever reason you don't find them there, I'll make sure to update the video with a link in the description below to wherever they end up being. But for now, you can get them there if you need to get them. Okay, so now I just start painting with that lighter brush, and I'm just going to start defining some, texture. You'll see that I'm constantly sizing my brush up and down with the bracket keys as I paint. Kind of overlapping strokes to build in some texture, some occasional little dabs just for some spottiness. I want to give it kind of a weathered, rigid or rustic look or whatever the word is. And one thing I want to do is I want to put a kind of seam line down the middle. So what I'll do is maybe put a little V shape here and darken that in. We'll see how that works. And then I want to run a line straight down. Sometimes I'll try to do like a straight quick pull. If that doesn't work, I'll just hold shift and kind of click back and forth while holding shift. Boom, 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 just like that. And, that'll give me my straight line to work off, and then I'll just kind of paint it because I don't want a perfectly straight line anyways, but it gives me a reference point to work with. All about making the job easier on myself, so. And if you've watched my videos in my channel, you know that I like to cheat, and I like to make it nice and easy. Alright, so I'll keep dabbing around and trying to get a feel for what kind of material this might be. I haven't got into painting any specularity yet. I imagine I want some. I don't think this is going to be like a leather bound shield or anything like that. But, I definitely want some grit and grime in there first. And then I'll go, start worrying about the specularity at the end of the painting or whatever. Now, another thing I'd like to see in this particular shape is like a bezel on the very edge. So maybe I'll do something like this. And keep in mind, I probably could have drew this in first, then copied it. I would have saved myself some time. So even though I just spoke about being all about saving time, I made a slight mistake there. I didn't think ahead in my artwork. But, you know, let that just be a lesson to you, that, you know, if you plan ahead in your work, you can save a tremendous amount of time. And that's, you know, one of the reasons why, as a professional, you can stamp out so much more work and get more and more jobs, because you start thinking so much more in advance. You know, it's like playing a game of chess, I guess, and being strategic about your work. So I just kind of add these little reference points and bezel lines so I can kind of picture how that would look. And I'm almost seeing maybe another little line next to that, and then this will be like kind of a raised, rounded piece. So I'll see if I can make that look cool or not. Do my best. And I'm thinking maybe like a dragon head on the face of this. Nothing too overly detailed, but might be kind of fun to do. So I'm going to try that too. Okay, so there's our, you know, basic design of what the shield's going to look like. And then, you know, to make this front part protrude out, I can just put a little bit of light source. Keep in mind, I just hit X to flip the colors over here. And just a little bit of light source to start giving myself some hints as to, you know, the shape of this. And forgive me if I say, you know, too much. I get comments on that. I really don't know where that comes from. It's just the way I talk. So forgive, forget, or move on. I don't know what to tell you. It's just the way I talk. So I've tried to be a little bit more knowledgeable of it and work it out of my system of speech. But apparently you can only teach an old dog so many new tricks, because I have a hard time not doing that. So, you know, I don't know what to tell you. At any rate, I will keep trying. Maybe after the next, I think I'm at like 270 videos. Maybe by the time I reach 500 videos, I'll have better speech patterns. I imagine, you know, like anything else, like, you know, that I will get better over time, I hope. We'll see. If not, just stop back every few hundred videos and you can tell me. Alright, so at any rate, little bits of trying to shape out that shield. Now, the other thing I like to do is work off some kind of background instead of just stark white. So I'll drop in another layer like so. And let's just grab a gradient and throw something back there. Oh, didn't work. Let's try it again. Yeah, just anything. I mean, actually a little bit more gradation. Yeah, something like that. It's just a little bit better than working off stark white, I think. And then a lot of times I'll even take the shield itself. I'll do this with another layer. I was going to just throw a quick drop shadow behind it, but I'll just paint one in like this, just so it looks like it's kind of floating off a background. And it just helps me visualize more depth to the piece. So let's try that. You know, and it's nothing that's got to stay in the end piece. I don't know. I like to paint this way a little bit more. Okay, so now I think I'll start painting in a little bit more of some kind of rough texture. So what I like to do here is just start getting in here and throwing in some little chips, some dings, just anything to make it look more weathered and more used in battle. Obviously, if it's all smooth and shiny, it's not going to look like it ever got used, or I don't know, maybe it could be that exceptional of a material where it managed to stay shiny the entire time. I don't know. But for this purpose, or this particular piece, we'll say that this one's very tattered and it's seen a lot of battle. And this is all just style choices, obviously. For stuff like this, I'll generally maybe study brick walls, or obviously there's a lot of weaponry that you can just Google and find out there. But I like to mix it up, so I'll look for like different rock textures, busted up buildings, maybe just anything really. Even some beat up wood textures might give you some insight into some different patterns you could put in here. I don't think there's really any one right or wrong way to do this. And forgive me, this one's going to seem a bit lengthy and slow. I didn't want to time-lapse this because I just felt like it might, you might get a loss of information there. So even though it's going to be a bit slower, hopefully this will appeal to people that are really trying to learn some techniques as the process unfolds. I know that for me, there's kind of a mix there. I like watching videos that are more time consuming but more detailed, and then also I like watching some time lapse when I'm on the go and it's a bit more rushed and I can't sit there and take my time and really study the entire video. So I try to do a few different types on my channel for that reason, obviously for the comments that I get. And I do want to thank everybody once again for all the continued support. I actually never expected this channel to go quite this far. Not that, I think I'm coming up on 19,000 subscribers or something. And, not that that's some great number. Obviously there's channels out there just dust mine to no end or whatever. But I guess I'm just more impressed with the idea that I wasn't expecting to do all that with it. I was just kind of using it as a outlet to share artwork and have a good time and network with other artists. And ended up turning into everything from meeting some really cool fellow artists to helping a lot of young aspiring artists and even selling some work in my commercial lifestyle. So yeah, it's been pretty neat, pretty cool. So I appreciate everything everybody does to share, like, and be part of all that. So pretty nifty. All right, as I digress, I should get back on track here, right? Sorry, I have a creative mind. I zone out and go on tangents, and I really can't help it. Just the way my brain works, I guess. Okay, so getting a little bit closer. And another thing I like to do too is paint stuff down and then paint it back up. I pick things up and put them down, basically. So yeah, darken it, hit X, go back to light, and start painting it up again. I really want to bring this bezel out more, so I'll just highlight the one side of it pretty heavy. Try to round that out. Like so. And the other reason why I like to paint behind it with a little bit of gradation is now when I do my highlights on the very edges, they pop a little bit more, as to where before you couldn't quite see them. So now with that little bit of tonal value in the background, I can work on these highlights and pick them apart a little more. So little bits like that. And I think what I'll do now is start working on that dragon face I was telling you about. It's not going to be ultra detailed because I don't want this to be too time consuming. But I'll try to show you a couple techniques on what I would do to make something like that kind of pop out. Also keep in mind that if you just do little bits of highlight on some of this tattered area, it gives it just a touch more depth. So you can just kind of poke and prod around and add these little specks of light around the cracks and the dents, and it gives it a little bit more appeal or depth. And then you can just do a couple little specks here and there just randomly of just the highlights and just the darks. But you know, it's all just playing around with it and seeing whatever looks cool, and whatever jumps out at you is what you want. I don't even know what I'm doing right there, but I like it. Just having fun with it. Alright, so now for the dragon head. We'll call this the dragon shield. How's that for inventiveness? Creativity? Okay, so now the dragon head. I'll add another layer because I love the layers. And I'll go back to dark, and I'll just kind of pencil sketch, you know, just a basic kind of dragon head shape. It's not going to be some great dragon here, just something that I think looks like a dragon, or could be a dragon. You know, you could almost do something that's just very, what's the word? Very vector based, or very, I don't know the word, very, but just shapes basically. Very design kind of oriented and not much detail at all. What's that? I don't know if I like that, but we'll roll with it because I don't want to keep trying to redraw some perfect dragon head here. So now all I'm going to do is paint in where I would picture some of the shadows being. In the mouth, the eye, the nose area, the ear area, like that. And then I'll take the white, so hit X again, paint some of the highlights, and I guess what I'm picturing here is that maybe this is molded or cast into the shield. I don't quite know how that would be made, but you know what I mean. Something to that effect. Give it just a little bit, kind of a bezeled look. And the neat thing about doing it on its own separate layer and painting in this fashion, see how it shows the cracks through there. So, and then if I don't like the way it's positioned, I can just individually manipulate that. Like one of my favorite tools on here is Transform Warp. And I can just kind of warp that artwork into place a bit. Hit enter. Say I'm done painting it, I would paint more than that on there obviously, but just to you know, show you the process and which I would use, I would hold Alt, move over with the pointer tool, and it would give me a copy, or I can just go duplicate layer, edit, transform, flip horizontally. You get this kind of weird monster going on right there. Command T, rotate that into place. Starting to not look like a dragon now, but oh well, it'll work. And then go edit, transform, distort. And again, I probably could have painted this all on one side and then flipped it at the last minute, but it's really just preference, you know. It's not too hard to do what we're doing here. So edit, transform, distort that into place, and once I got it to where I think it looks relatively in place, I think the other side needs to be adjusted a bit. And then I can hit Command, oh, make sure I got, yeah, got to be on the top one, Command E. And now the dragon layer is on its own. You know, it's a pretty weak looking dragon, but, and I can just get in there and paint a little bit more. And you know, I can start looking at it, like right now it just looks like I don't know, I drew over top of the shield, which is what I did, but I can start getting in there now and trying to paint it and make it look a little bit more like a bezeled material. And I could just do that by, you know, just shading and going back and forth with highlights and trying to define the material a little bit more. And I think I'll do that on a layer above it. I'm really big on using layers because it just allows me to go back and forth. And, you know, if I make some horrendous mistake, I can obviously just delete the layer and start over if I have to. So layers, I think, can be a very powerful tool and a way to experiment and really get your art where you want it. Now, obviously, the highlights on the dragon look symmetrical, which you wouldn't want. That's one thing about, you know, copying something and working off the other side. You got to remember that shadows and highlights are never, almost never symmetrical. They're going to react differently on a face from one side to the other. So they're definitely going to react differently on, you know, a shield like this from one side to the other. So just something to keep in mind. And it's real hard to get yourself out of the habit of just going for what seems easy, and that's adding the same kind of highlights from side to side. At least for me it is anyways. So you got to practice getting out of that groove and picturing what shadows would affect your object differently from side to side. Okay, so now another thing I might do at this stage is copy all these layers that I've worked up for the shield. Command J, Command E, merge them together, disappear the other layers. And now I've got this on its own layer and actually with the shadow, so I didn't want that. Let me go back. Command Alt Z to go back a couple times. Right there. And let me just delete those. Yeah, see, I didn't want the shadow right there. So hold Shift, select these layers, Command J, Command E, and disappear these layers. Okay, there we go. So all I want to do here is make sure I was on its own layer so I can do my final touch-ups for, you know, my variation of highlights. Now, I would do a lot more to this to call it a finished piece, but I just want to show you a few more techniques on how I would paint something like this. And then you can play around with it and go as far as you want with the finality of the piece. But I just don't want this video to be too awfully crazy long. So I'd get in here and just keep painting away and trying to define some of the materials. So if I wanted this more specular, I would start adding little highlights like these to make it look like a reflective material in some areas. And to me, reflective materials generally have a really bright hot spot like this, and then they break off to a tonal value quickly and then disperse quickly. I think I'm saying that right. So I would do that over the areas that I expect to be very specular. Now, another cool little quick way to do this is your dodge and burn. So I'll show you that here in a second, but I'm just showing you how I would kind of paint it and pretend like I know what I'm doing here. You know, fake it till you make it kind of thing. A couple little highlights on the other side, but mainly keeping that in the dark. And again, trying not to, even that, you know, I put the highlight in the same spot as over there, so that wasn't a good call. This highlight would be maybe over here, if at all. And again, nowhere near as bright because this side's in shadow. But yeah, I have a hard time with not just adding the highlights in the same exact spot, so I'm trying to fight that as I go here. Okay, so we'll say something like that, and a little bit more texturing here. I'd also recommend turning down the opacity of the brush if you want to slowly work up your highlights. It seems like the highlights can get painted in really quick, and they're easy to overdo. So if you have that problem, like I do, then just turn your opacity down even further so that you can slowly add those in. I'm going to go ahead and do that now so I can show you what I'm talking about. So it just gives you a little bit more freedom to paint if you're still kind of feeling out the process and you don't want to overly bleach in your highlights or paint them in too dramatically. So that leaves a little bit more highlights on the shield, and like I said, now you could come in with the dodge tool, and if you wanted to punch up the specularity, it's real easy to do. Again, it's real easy to overdo, so you just gotta play with it. That's why I like making copies of the artwork at this stage also, to get it just right. And we can drop our shadow back in and see if that makes it pop a little bit more. Tone that shadow down just a little bit. But yeah, so that's essentially how I would, paint something like that. So a few of the effects that I would use, and you could take it as far as you want. Obviously, you can just keep going and really make this look more and more realistic with the overlays of texture and going back and forth with your highlights and your shadows. Okay, so I'll go ahead and time-lapse this next portion and add some more details so I can show you how I would bring this to more of a finished level. Okay, so that's about, how far I would take it. I mean, obviously you can get in there and keep noodling around and get it really detailed or whatever you're after, but hopefully that gives you an idea. And if you notice, I added a little bit of like overlay layers. Some I just threw in some little specks just to, give it a little bit more grit. Was this an overlay? This was a normal, just with soft brush, kind of adding a little bit more shadows. So I kind of bounce back and forth after I add this color layer, and all I did there was basically take the gray tone and paint right over top of it with color mode. So hopefully you're able to see that since I showed the interface and everything. So if you got any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments section below. Let me know, as always, what you'd like to see in the future, and I'll always try to bring that to you. I try to answer my video responses relatively quickly, or video requests, I should say. And yeah, just let me know what you think, and be sure to like, subscribe, and share if you don't mind. Helps me progress the channel and keep bringing you new content. And as always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and we will talk to you soon.